Let's talk about our planet's drylands. Right now, they are under some serious pressure, with huge areas turning into desert. But what if the solution isn't just one thing? What if it's a powerful combination of two, a way of thinking and a way of doing? Today, we're going to dig into how a big-picture design philosophy and some real practical science are teaming up to regreen some of the toughest landscapes on Earth. So here's our roadmap. First, we'll get a handle on just how big this problem is. Then, we'll explore an idea called permaculture and its core principles. After that, we'll see these ideas in action in a pretty amazing case study from Rajasthan before we pull it all together to see what a future that's designed for sustainability could actually look like.
All right, so let's get right into it. To really appreciate the solutions, we have to first understand the massive challenge we are up against with land degradation.
Now, this number, 35.5%, it represents a staggering human reality. Over a third of the entire world's population lives in drylands. Think about that. More than a third of us living in places that are extremely vulnerable to becoming deserts, with the constant threat of not having enough water.
And for the folks living there, this is not some abstract idea. It's their everyday life. We're talking about up to 2 billion people already facing water scarcity. And the projections? They suggest that climate change could force anywhere from 24 million to 700 million people to move. The stakes here are just incredibly high.
So, why is this happening? Well, this chart here shows you one of the big reasons why. It's about economics. When the financial value of something like a forest drops off a cliff, well, so does the motivation to protect it. When forests stop showing up on the economic spreadsheets, they start disappearing from the landscape. It's that simple.
But what if we change how we look at the spreadsheets altogether? What if we change the entire framework? That brings us to our next section, a philosophy that offers a totally different way of thinking about how we live on this planet.
And that is permaculture. Now, this is way more than just a fancy way to garden. You should think of it as a complete design system. The whole idea is to stop fighting against nature and instead start designing our world, our food, our homes, our communities to mimic the way nature already works, to follow its patterns.
And this quote from its co-founder, David Holmgren, is really the key to understanding where it comes from. Permaculture was born from this idea of an energy descent future. Basically, a future where we just can't count on having endless cheap energy and resources anymore. It's a design science for how to live well in a world with limits.
Okay, that sounds great in theory, right? But how do you actually design for a future with less? Well, the answer is in a set of really clear, practical principles. They're like a toolkit for sustainable design.
The whole philosophy is guided by about a dozen of these principles, and here are just a few to give you a feel for it. Observe and interact basically means look and listen and learn before you jump in and do something. Produce no waste is this brilliant idea that everything you produce can be a resource for something else. And use and value diversity. Well, that's a direct challenge to the fragile single crop systems we see so often. They're all about designing with nature.
And this slide? This is where it all just clicks together beautifully. On the left, you've got a permaculture symbol that means design from patterns to details. Start with the big picture, then zoom in. And on the right, a scientific diagram of a tree improvement cycle over many generations. It's the exact same logic. You start with the big pattern, the best forest you can find, and then slowly, generation by generation, you refine and select for the details, the absolute best trees. It's the philosophy and the science speaking the exact same language.
Okay, let's take these ideas out of the textbook and put them to the test in the real world. And not just any real world, but one of the toughest classrooms you can imagine, the arid landscapes of Rajasthan, India. This is where the theory gets its hands dirty.
Just look at this chart. It tells you everything you need to know about how tough this place is. The rain is all over the place, and in some spots they get less than 100 millimeters a year. I mean, that is a tiny fraction of what most forests need to survive. If you're going to plant trees here and have them live, you better know what you're doing.
So, how'd they pull it off? They made a huge shift from the old way of doing things to a totally integrated approach. And look how these new techniques just scream permaculture. Instead of fragile monocultures, they planted a whole mix of different species. Instead of ignoring waste, they saw things like city wastewater and ash as valuable resources. They decided to work with the land, not against it.
This right here is that use and value diversity principle in action. The scientists weren't just throwing any old tree out there. No way. They chose very specific species that were perfectly suited to different little microclimates.
Kesri for the sandy bits, Doc for the rocky parts. Every single plant had a specific job to do and was valued for what it brought to the table.
And getting these trees to survive isn't just about luck. It's about a super careful scientific process. It starts with selecting seeds from the absolute best of the best trees. They call them plus trees. Then they meticulously treat the seeds, raise them in nurseries, and finally harden them, which is basically like boot camp for saplings to get them ready for the harsh real world. It's all about using small, slow, and really smart solutions.
And this is what it's all for. This is the result. This isn't some miracle. This is the payoff you get from combining thoughtful design with dedicated science. It just goes to show you that even in the most beat-up landscapes, regeneration is absolutely possible when we have a vision and the right tools.
So what's the big lesson here? What do we take away from this amazing project in Rajasthan? Well, the most important thing to realize is that this isn't an either-or choice. It's not philosophy versus science. The real power, the real magic, happens when you bring them both together.
If you were to break it down, to really look at the recipe for success, it would look something like this. Look at the two biggest pieces of the pie. A holistic design framework, that's the why we're doing it, guided by principles. And site-specific science, that's the technical how that actually makes it work on the ground. They are equally critical. You need both.
And that's really the heart of it all. That's the main takeaway. Real, lasting, resilient solutions come to life when we fuse a powerful guiding philosophy, the why, with rigorous, specific science, the how. One gives you the vision, the other gives you the tools to build it.
And look, this approach isn't just for deserts, not at all. These principles, observing nature, valuing diversity, producing no waste, they can be applied absolutely anywhere, in our cities, in our farms, in our own backyards. So the question I want to leave you with is, how can we start using this powerful combination of why and how to design a more sustainable future, right where we are?